You can miss your child all day and still need silence when they finally arrive home. That moment is where the guilt starts and where most working mothers go quiet. Not because they love their children less, but because their nervous system is already full. They walk through the door carrying deadlines, emails, snack requests, laundry, and unfinished thoughts. Then a small voice says, "Watch this," and something inside them flinches before smiling. That flinch is not failure, it is overload arriving home still wearing office clothes. Working mom guilt often sounds noble, but underneath, it is usually fear with better manners. Fear that work is quietly stealing something important and the loss will someday be visible. Fear that exhaustion is slowly becoming their personality and their children will remember that version. Fear that everyone needs the same hour they no longer have left. And because guilt sounds loving, nobody notices how closely it lives beside resentment. That is the contradiction nobody says aloud because good mothers are expected to stay grateful. She wanted the career, needed the income, loves her child, and still feels split open. She may even enjoy working, which makes the guilt feel even less socially acceptable. Because people forgive exhausted mothers faster than mothers who admit work gives them something. Structure, identity, competence, adult conversation, a place where effort sometimes leads to visible results. Then she comes home to love that matters more and answers that matter less. Why is dinner late? Where are my trainers? Can you sign this? Are you listening? She hears those questions after being available to strangers all day, and her body reads danger. Not because her family is dangerous, but because constant demand makes tenderness feel expensive. That is one of the cruelest parts of modern parenthood right now. The people you love most often meet the version of you with least energy. And if your child is young, they do not read context yet. They just feel your pause, your thinner patience, your distracted yes, your delayed warmth. If your child is older, the cycle changes shape but not pressure. A teen disappears behind a bedroom door and the lit screen all. You tell yourself they need space, then wonder if space has quietly replaced connection. Will you answer one last work message? They answer nobody at all. And somehow the phone in your hand starts feeling like evidence against. Evidence that you were physically there, but emotionally buffering in the background. This is where guilt becomes a cycle instead of a feeling alone. You feel bad for being stretched in, so you try harder tomorrow. You overcompensate with effort, patience, planning, snacks, cleaner lunches, softer tones, extra availability. But extra effort does not create extra capacity when your inner battery is already blinking. So the next interruption lands harder and the guilt returns even sharper. Then comes the private promise that keeps many mothers trapped far longer than necessary. Tomorrow, I will be more present, more patient, more playful, more everything. It sounds hopeful, but it quietly ignores the actual problem underneath completely. The problem is not that she does not care enough about anyone in that house. The problem is that caring has become nonstop output with almost no recovery. And when recovery disappears, guilt gets louder because your patience gets shorter. That shorter patience is often the first sign parents judge in themselves. They notice the sharp reply, not the 6 hours of quiet self-control. They remember the sigh at homework, not the spreadsheet finished during school pickup. They replay bedtime impatience, not the lunch packed while checking a meeting agenda. The invisible labor keeps running even when her laptop closes and the office version disappears. She is tracking dentist forms, birthday gifts, empty milk, emotional weather, and tomorrow's logistics. No wonder a spilled drink can feel like the final vote against her. Guilt has terrible editing skills, cutting out your effort and looping your worst moments. It takes a whole day and reduces it to one tone of voice. That is why so many working mothers feel guilty even during good weeks. Nothing catastrophic happened, but they still feel behind in something impossible to define. Because the standard is not realistic and the measuring tool is emotional. Did I earn enough? Show up enough? Listen enough? Smile enough? Hold enough? No human nervous system can answer that every day without starting to fray. Especially in a culture that treats every ordinary parenting moment like a referendum. Screen time becomes a moral test, even when everyone in the house is depleted. Packed lunches become signs of devotion instead of simple food prepared by tired adults. Attending every school event becomes proof you are not missing childhood itself. Even rest gets turned against mothers, especially when someone nearby looks disappointed. 10 quiet minutes can feel like betrayal when the kitchen still looks busy. A solo walk can feel selfish when your child had a hard day. Closing the bathroom door can feel dramatic when everyone else also needs something. Yet the guilt is not proof you are doing motherhood correctly today. Sometimes guilt is just your body protesting an impossible workload that love alone cannot solve. That matters because many mothers turn structural pressure into personal failure stories. They say, "I should cope better," instead of, "This is too much for anyone." And that sentence changes everything because it moves shame away from your character. When pressure is named clearly, guilt stops pretending to be truth alone. It becomes a signal that your load needs adjusting, not a verdict on your love. That is the first useful shift, and it matters more than people think. Ask less, "Am I a good mom?" and more, "What is draining me?" Those are different questions, and only one leads somewhere practical today gently. If meetings spill into pickup, the guilt is not solved by self-criticism. If bedtime follows a day of nonstop decisions, irritability makes psychological sense. Decision fatigue is not trendy language, it changes how kindly you can respond. After 100 choices, even simple questions can sound like one more demand. Which is why a child asking twice can feel louder than they actually are. It is also why guilt spikes at night when noise ends and replay begins. During the day, survival helps you keep moving before reflection has space to speak. At night, the mind starts collecting tiny moments and calling them evidence. The missed story, the distracted answer, the rushed goodbye suddenly line up like a case. But memory under stress is not a fair witness, especially when love already feels tender. It always finds the clip where you looked least like yourself today. That does not mean your child is quietly building a tragic biography. Children do not experience us as single moments nearly as much as patterns. And the pattern most loved children notice is repair, not perfection, over time. A mother who snaps, then returns, teaches something deeply stabilizing about relationships and repair. A mother who says, "I was overwhelmed," lets a child stop personalizing everything. A mother who apologizes without collapsing into shame gives emotional honesty a shape. That matters in every country, every postcode, every schedule, every family type. Because children do not need a permanently serene mother to feel secure. They need enough connection, enough repair, and adults who tell the truth calmly. That truth might sound smaller than guilt expects, but it lands deeper in family life. "I was tired, not done with you, and I want to start again. I needed 10 minutes, not distance, because my mind was still running everywhere. Your feelings were real even if my response was thin earlier today." Those sentences do not erase hard moments, but they stop them hardening into confusion. And they interrupt the guilt cycle at its most dangerous point of all. The point where shame tells you to withdraw right when connection would help most. Shame loves distance because distance protects it from being challenged by reality. But reality is often kinder than the story in your head tonight. Your child probably remembers more warmth than your guilt admits, even on stretch days. Your teen probably notices more trying than they know how to say. And if they seem distant, that distance may not be a verdict. Teenagers often pull away while still tracking everything, especially your steadiness and availability. They may answer in shrugs and still feel safer because you kept showing up. The same is true for younger children after rushed evenings too sometimes. One distracted pickup does not cancel 1,000 ordinary acts of care. Ordinary care is what families are mostly built from anyway each day. Refilled water bottles, remembered socks, repeated reminders, silent worry, patient retries, repaired goodnights. None of that looks glamorous enough to cancel guilt in your mind. But children often feel love most clearly in repetition, not performance alone. Still, this does not mean mothers should just think differently and carry on. Some guilt is asking for practical change, not prettier internal language alone. Maybe one evening needs stronger boundaries around work notifications before they reach the dinner table. Maybe the after-school hour needs less efficiency and more predictability daily. Maybe your child needs a ritual instead of more explanations right now. 5 minutes on the sofa before cooking can reset the whole temperature of home. A cup of tea together after daycare can become a bridge between worlds. A short drive with no questions first can help overwhelmed brains come down. 10 minutes beside a teenager without fixing anything can rebuild contact more than lectures. These are small shifts, but small shifts are what overloaded families can actually repeat. Big ideals usually fail at 6:30 on a Wednesday when everyone is depleted. Small rituals survive real life because they ask less from tired bodies. And that matters more than inspiring plans that only work on calm weekends. Another quiet truth about working mom guilt is that it is often lonely. Loneliness grows fastest when everyone praises your coping and nobody notices the cost. From outside, she looks organized, responsive, capable, and strangely hard to help. Inside, she is calculating dinner, deadlines, moods, bills, permission slips, and tomorrow's alarm. Not just because mothers are busy, but because honesty feels socially risky. Saying I am grateful and drowning does not fit neatly in conversation. Saying I love my child and sometimes want nobody touching me feels unsayable. Saying work matters to me and still costs me emotionally can invite judgment. So many mothers edit themselves before anyone else can hear them honestly. And edited pain usually grows in private because unseen pressure rarely becomes smaller. That is why naming this cycle matters so much today for mothers. Once a pattern has a name, you stop mistaking it for identity. You stop saying, I am a bad mother perhaps after all tonight. You start saying, I am in a guilt cycle and I need support. Support might be practical, emotional, relational, or simply more honest conversations nearby. But it begins with refusing to treat chronic overload like a character flaw. If this landed somewhere deep, that probably means it named something real. So tonight, before you replay every imperfect moment, try one gentler question instead. What was I carrying before that moment even happened to me today? Sometimes that answer changes the whole story you tell yourself about motherhood. And if this gave language to something you have been silently living, leave a comment with the part that felt uncomfortably familiar or quietly relieving. And if you want more honest conversations about burnout, guilt, and family overload, subscribe. There is more beneath the surface, and that is exactly where this channel goes.